Have you ever sat across from a woman and felt that something was happening, yet you couldn't quite name it? There's no confession, no clear expression, just the way her gaze lingers a little longer than usual. A moment of silence completely free of awkwardness. A brief touch, yet she doesn't pull away too soon, and you start to feel confused, unsure whether it's genuine affection or just courtesy. The truth is, some women will never say, "I like you," but they leave behind so many traces if you're attentive enough to notice. She doesn't speak through words, she speaks through her presence, by staying longer when no one asks her to, by looking at you slower and deeper, by asking small, seemingly casual questions that have nothing to do with flirting, yet touch places only someone sincere would ever care about. The real issue is, most men respond too soon. They see a sign, and they text. They sense a look, and they confess, while what she truly needs is something entirely different. A man who's not in a rush, who doesn't try to control, who doesn't force himself to decode emotions, but simply stays long enough for her to feel safe. Have you ever been in that situation? If you have, share your story in the comments, because sometimes your experience could be the light that helps another man find his way. And if you've ever found a woman who sits silently beside you for too long, don't assume she doesn't care. Maybe she's liked you for a very long time. It's just that you weren't still enough to notice it. But if you're the kind of man who doesn't need words to understand, you'll begin to realize this. True feelings always show up in the smallest details, and the very first sign is how she chooses to appear in front of you. 1. She becomes more put together every time she sees you. She doesn't say a word, she doesn't message you before the meeting, doesn't ask what time you'll arrive, but if you're attentive enough, if you slow down just enough to look closely, you'll sense that something feels slightly different. A slower brush through her hair, an outfit that isn't flashy, but clearly chosen with care, a new scent drifting by, just enough to make you turn as she walks past, not to impress the entire room, but simply to be seen by one person only, you. I once noticed such a change. Normally she was simple, almost invisible, but that day it was still her, only different in the way she stepped into the room. Her gaze was softer, her posture held a hint of hesitation, and in that moment I realized there are things that don't require words, but they do require someone perceptive enough to see. When a woman starts to care, she doesn't need to say anything. She quietly prepares, not for the crowd, not for the glances around her, but for one specific gaze. When she appears more refined, it's not about trying to look beautiful. It's a purposeful way of showing up, gentle yet unmistakable. I don't need to stand out. I just hope you don't look away. The difference between a woman who feels nothing and one who's quietly holding something inside is incredibly subtle. One lets everything pass. The other, still herself, becomes a little softer, a little closer, as if she's slowly unfolding something sincere. Many men don't notice, or if they do, they respond in the wrong way. One casual joke can be enough to make her pull back, as if nothing ever happened. And if you let her retreat, don't expect there to be a second time. The man who slows down enough, who sees deeply enough, won't need confirmation. Just one glance, one still moment, is enough to know. Today, she chose to show up for you, because there are feelings that don't need to be returned, but they deeply need to be seen. 2. She listens in a way no one else does. There are women who seem to be listening when you speak, but deep down, you know they're not really there. They nod at the right moments, smile just enough, but their eyes have drifted elsewhere. You share something meaningful, only to receive a polite reaction, and quickly the silence is filled by an unrelated topic, as if nothing you said truly mattered. But she's not like that. When she cares, you don't feel it through compliments. You feel it in the way she holds silence. She doesn't interrupt you. She doesn't glance at her phone. She doesn't rush you to finish. She gives you that little extra space to breathe, to think, to find the truest words hidden somewhere inside yourself. And suddenly you realize this isn't just a conversation. This is a place where you can be safe. Her silence isn't cold. It's a soft space, an atmosphere where you don't need to be strong or right. In that moment, you don't have to perform or pretend. You just have to be honest. And strangely, that honesty doesn't make you feel smaller. It makes you feel fully seen, without interruption, without judgment, without shrinking. I once told her something I had never told anyone, not because she asked, but because she made me feel lighter just by being there. As if she were quietly saying, I don't need you to be perfect. I just want to listen to the most real part of you, the one you've never let anyone else see. That kind of listening doesn't come from skill. It comes from a woman who's calm enough not to cut you off, and deep enough not to turn every talk into advice. She doesn't need to teach you how to live. She just needs to stay long enough for you to finally say what you've kept inside for far too long. With her, you don't need to sound clever. You just need to be true. And sometimes, the person who listens long enough is the one who already chose to stay, long before you realized you needed them to. 3. She moves closer, not with her steps, but with emotion. There are moments when she draws near, not with her footsteps, but with something deeper. You're telling a story that isn't all that important, and suddenly, something shifts. You don't remember when she moved, but the space between the two of you is somehow smaller. A tilt of her shoulder, a slight lean toward you, or maybe her chair shifted just a little, just enough for you to feel her presence more clearly. She doesn't touch you, she doesn't try to create contact, and yet you feel it unmistakably. She is coming closer, not with words, not with steps, but with something softer, something only a man who's truly paying attention will recognize. And if you're quiet enough to stay present in that moment, you'll understand. She doesn't need to say, I want to be near you. She's simply asking, quietly, can you feel me coming closer, even if I haven't said a word? The physical distance she keeps is always within a safe boundary, but it's not distant, not too close to make you uncomfortable, yet not far enough for you to forget she's right there. It's how she holds herself, and you, within a rhythm that doesn't rush, but feels real. I once sat in a small cafe, and she leaned in just slightly, just enough to close the space. No explanation, no reason, and strangely, that small shift made me stop speaking for a moment, not out of awkwardness, but because her presence became more vivid than ever. When a woman truly cares, she rarely comes forward with noise. She moves with small gestures, each filled with intention, and if you miss those micro movements, you might miss a deep signal she may never repeat, because sometimes what she wants isn't to step fully into your space. What she wants is to create a closeness, just enough to see if you're perceptive enough to take the first step toward her. 4. She smiles, not because of what you say, but because you're there. Sometimes you say something utterly ordinary, a random story, a passing thought, a comment that isn't even funny. And then something unexpected happens. She smiles, not a big laugh, not a forced chuckle to keep the mood light, just a gentle, honest smile, enough to make you feel closer. One evening after work, I was talking about a dull meeting at the office. I didn't think she'd care, but she looked at me, smiled, then gently shook her head, as if to say, "You really do have a way of making things feel lighter without even trying." And I understood then that smile wasn't for the story. It was for my presence. When a woman trusts you, she doesn't need a reason to smile. It's not a response, it's a soft release. A moment when she doesn't have to be smarter, funnier, or more beautiful than she usually is. When she's beside someone who allows her to breathe without overthinking, everything starts to feel like enough, even when nothing particularly special is happening. And that smile, even if it lasts only a second, can stay with you for a very long time, like a soft glow in the middle of an ordinary day, a feeling you can't quite name, but one you'll always want to experience again. If you've ever been the reason for such a smile when you did absolutely nothing, know that maybe she felt safe in your presence, because not everyone can offer that, not through words, not through actions, but simply through being there, fully, without trying to prove anything. There are women who don't smile because of what you say, but because of how you make them feel like they don't need to be anyone else, gentle, unpressured, free from having to appear happier, better, or stronger than they are. And if you're slow enough to notice that, you'll realize sometimes a single smile says more than any "I love you." It's a quiet admission that says, "With you, I feel enough." 5. She notices even the smallest changes in you. That morning, you arrived earlier than usual. Your eyes hadn't fully awakened. Your shoulders carried the weight of what seemed like a long night. You still smiled, still exchanged a few polite words. No one noticed anything unusual. But when she walked in, without looking long, she asked, "You seem a bit tired today, don't you?" That question was so simple, it could have easily been dismissed. But the truth is, no one else asked. Not because others didn't care, but because they didn't sense it. She did. Women don't observe with logic. They feel. They notice the slight delay in how you answer. They see the faint dimness in your eyes. They pay attention to how long you sit still, the way your fingers gently turn the cup, as if something inside you is quietly stuck. And they don't need proof to know that there's something you haven't said. There was a rainy afternoon when I sat beside her on a stone bench. The wind was cold, and neither of us spoke. When we stood up, she didn't ask what was wrong. She just said, "I know today isn't an easy day for you, but I'm here." Not because she guessed right, but because she was sensitive and cared enough to see it, in a way no one else ever did. You don't need to be a man who talks a lot to be understood. You just need to sit beside the right person, the one sensitive enough to sense something's wrong, even when you show no sign at all. And when a woman notices the things you don't say, the changes even you haven't realized, it's not just observation, it's quiet empathy, a kind of care very few can offer you, and one that's truly worth holding on to. 6. She lets the touch linger just a moment longer. You hand her a pen or a glass of water, something simple. Your hands brush for a brief second, but she doesn't pull away immediately. No awkwardness, no hesitation. She takes what you offer gently, but instead of retreating quickly, she lets it stay for just a beat longer, just enough for you to feel something's happening, even if nothing is said. That isn't accidental. It's a moment being held, if only for a second. When a woman feels nothing, she keeps her distance clearly. She withdraws by reflex, the same way she does with the rest of the world. But if she lets her hand linger with yours, even just slightly, then it's no longer just a passing touch. It's more like an unspoken question. Are you really here? Or are you going to pull away like everyone else? A woman who has been hurt before becomes cautious of even the smallest gestures. But if she lets you touch her a moment longer, maybe she's testing whether you'll stay when there's no clear reason to, when no one's asking you to return anything. And you won't see that if you're in a hurry, because women with depth rarely speak directly about feelings. They express them through small movements, a touch, a glance, a silence that doesn't last long, but just long enough for you to notice. They don't need you to say anything, only that you don't look away. Only when you're calm enough to notice what seems insignificant will you realize she didn't touch you to be closer. She touched you to see whether you would let go. 7. She shows up where you are, like a beautiful coincidence. There are women who don't need to say they care. They don't ask where you are. They don't text to set up a meeting. But somehow, you still see them, at the very place you show up, on the very day you didn't expect to see anyone you knew. At first, you smile and chalk it up to coincidence, but when it happens again, you begin to sense that in this accidental moment, something intentional is quietly unfolding. That afternoon, you were walking alone along the riverside. You hadn't messaged anyone, hadn't shared your location, and then you saw her, standing by the railing, holding a paper bag, her eyes quietly resting on the water. She didn't walk toward you, nor did she pretend to be surprised. Just a subtle nod, as if she'd already been standing there for a while, and your arrival happened to fall into place. Another time, it was in a small bookstore on the corner. You wandered toward the philosophy shelf in the back, only to find her already there, browsing the spines of old books with familiar fingers. She didn't call out to you, just turned, smiled softly, and moved on to the next aisle. Natural, unforced, as if she hadn't come for you, but had shown up at the very moment you were there. When someone appears repeatedly in the places you go, unplanned, unannounced, it's no longer random. A woman who feels nothing doesn't follow your path, but when she starts observing from a distance and silently being present again and again, it means she's trying to say something in a way only she would know how. She doesn't intrude on your life. She doesn't try to be important. She simply passes through, close enough for you to notice, but far enough not to make you uncomfortable. That's her way of giving you a choice, to come closer or not. And if you pay attention, you'll understand. She isn't waiting for an invitation to approach. She's simply choosing to be wherever you are, because you're there. Not for a reason, not with explanation, simply because your presence is reason enough for her to show up. 8. She starts to speak like you, sit like you. The change doesn't arrive with any grand announcement. It begins with something small. You use a slightly odd word to describe something, and she laughs, repeats it. At first, it feels like a joke, but then, a few days later, you hear her use that exact word again in a different conversation, not with you, but with someone else, effortlessly, unintentionally, as if your language had quietly begun to live inside her. Then you start to notice she sits more like you, not in any exact posture, but in a familiar rhythm, the way she leans back, crosses her legs, the way her eyes slow down to observe. And when she smiles, there's something in it that feels unmistakably familiar, as if a part of you is being mirrored back, but softer, more feminine. She's not trying to imitate you, not at all. What's happening between the two of you doesn't come from effort. It comes from feeling. When a woman quietly cherishes someone long enough, her world begins to tilt slightly toward his way of seeing things, even if she doesn't realize it herself. She notices the things you notice. She finds joy in the topics you often mention, and in that change, there's no loss of identity, only a quiet merging that feels entirely natural. You don't need to ask. You don't need to confirm, just observe in silence. Because if one day you notice she's starting to talk like you, to look at things the way you do, maybe she's falling for you in the deepest way possible by learning to feel the world through your eyes. And the most beautiful part is this: she's not changing to be loved by you. She's changing because she already loves you. A love that makes no noise, asks for nothing in return, except that you stay true to yourself, true enough that the world you live in becomes a place she genuinely wants to step into. 9. She blushes when she's not prepared for it. There are bodily reactions that happen even before the mind has time to stop them. A sudden turn of the head, a skipped heartbeat, and a faint flush across the cheeks, all unfolding in just a few fleeting seconds. But if you're attentive enough to notice, you'll understand. It's the moment her emotions step outside, unguarded. I once walked into a meeting without warning. She was chatting comfortably with a friend until I appeared. Her eyes froze, her sentence trailed off, and then the skin on her cheeks shifted color. Not much, not obvious, but enough for me to know her emotions had just been stirred, and she hadn't had time to hide them. Sometimes you might say something simple, a compliment, a glance held just long enough, and she blushes. She doesn't deflect. She doesn't look away. She just stays quiet, her cheeks warming as a response that feels more honest than any words. No woman without feelings for a man would blush like that. That reaction, blushing, can't be faked. It's a micro expression lasting less than 2 seconds, and yet it's more truthful than any confession. It speaks for all the things she hasn't yet found the courage to admit, and isn't ready to cover up either. And what's precious is this: she doesn't try to hide it from you, because somewhere, deeper than the shyness itself, is a part of her that hopes you'll notice and not walk away. So if you ever see a woman blush when no one's asking her to, don't rush to speak. Stay quiet. Stay present. Because sometimes the only thing she's hoping for is to see whether you're gentle enough to witness the truth inside something that fragile. 10. She stays, even when there's no reason left to. There are moments that seem like they've ended, yet they remain, not because of anything specific, but simply because someone isn't ready to leave, not because of promises, not because of politeness, and certainly not out of a need to be fulfilled. Simply this: she stays, even when everything is enough to stand up and walk away. The conversation has ended, the coffee's long gone, both of you sit in silence, and no one adds anything else. Yet she's still there, naturally, at ease, not trying to come up with another topic to prolong the meeting. She doesn't smile more than usual, nor does she look at you as if waiting for a signal. She just sits, as if she's not ready for time to move on. And what catches your attention isn't the fact that she stays, but the way she stays. Unforced, unhurried, doing nothing, expecting nothing. The silence isn't heavy. On the contrary, it makes the space strangely more intimate. A stillness that needs no filling, because it's already complete in its own way. That moment says many things on its own. I don't need anything more from you. I just want a little longer, just to be next to you, with no purpose at all. When a woman feels nothing, she'll leave the moment. There's no reason to stay. But when she chooses to remain, not out of manners, not out of courtesy, but simply because she wants to be near you a little longer, that's a message. Gentle, soft, but real. And if you've ever seen a woman like that, don't think she's hesitating. She might be quietly telling you the most sincere thing of all. She might be quietly telling you the most sincere thing of all. I don't need anything more, just not ready to leave this moment that has you in it. And if you let your heart be still for just a few seconds, You might not want to stand up too soon either. 11. She asks about private things without pushing. Not every woman will ask directly, "Do you like me?" A deep woman won't step into emotions like that. She'll ask something else, not about you and her, but something that speaks volumes about the distance between the two of you. What do you usually do when you feel lonely? That question might seem casual, but it doesn't come from the mind. It comes from emotion. It doesn't corner you into answering, but it can't be brushed off lightly either, because it touches a part of you that you rarely show anyone. When a woman isn't interested, she'll ask surface-level things, work, routines, things easy to share. But when she starts to truly care, she wants to understand what's underneath. She wants to step into a space you're not sure you've ever invited anyone into, but she asks anyway, because she's patient enough to listen. She doesn't push, she doesn't pry. She simply opens a door and leaves it to you to choose, speak or don't. But even if you remain silent, she won't walk away, because what she wants isn't a perfect answer. It's a sign that you're willing to unlock the door, even just a little. That question is like a gentle knock. It doesn't pressure, it doesn't intrude, but it makes you pause. It's not there to gather information. It's there to see if you're ready to let someone glimpse what you've kept hidden beneath all that calm. And in that moment of hesitation, not your reply, that's what she's really listening to. Because if she asks, it's not out of curiosity. It's because she wants to stand beside your true self, even the corners you'd rather no one see. And if you let her be there, even with just a vague, half-formed answer, she'll stay. There's something curious about it. The more genuine a woman's feelings are, the less she talks about them. She doesn't begin with, "I like you." She doesn't send clear signals or make direct confessions like we're used to seeing in movies. Instead, she chooses to show up, quieter, softer, but also more real. She stays a little longer when no one's asking her to, looks a little deeper when you're not looking back, lingers just slightly when someone else might have already pulled away. It's not a tactic, it's instinct. When a woman genuinely cares, and she wants you to feel it, not through your ears, but through her quiet presence beside you. If you're in a rush, you won't notice any of it. These subtle gestures will pass by like wind brushing across your skin. Not loud enough to name, but just strong enough for the heart to know something's happening. If you're not slow enough, not open enough, then even the most beautiful signs will slip away as moments missed. Feelings, especially those from a woman with depth, are not puzzles to be solved. They are soft invitations, a slightly open door, a gaze that lingers just a little too long, a silence that doesn't need to be filled. It doesn't require someone clever enough to analyze, just someone attentive enough to stay, truly stay. And sometimes what they need isn't someone who responds immediately, but someone who recognizes what's unfolding and chooses not to walk away. Someone safe enough for her to relax into, steady enough for her to be herself. Because in a woman's world, love is not in what's said. It's in her choice to remain with you just a bit longer, when she could very well have turned away and walked on. If you've just realized 2, 3, or even 5 of these signs were meant for you, don't rush to send a text. Don't be too quick to ask, "Do you like me?" And don't try to force a vague moment into a neatly wrapped conclusion, because the truth is, some women express the most when they are silent, and if you move too fast, you might push something beautiful away before it's had the chance to become real. Women, especially those with a sense of quiet elegance, don't come closer with words. They create a space. They don't step toward you directly, but they don't walk away either. They wait to see, Are you deep enough to notice that this door is slowly opening, quietly, but for you? What they need is not someone who's great at decoding feelings, but someone who won't disrupt the atmosphere they've created with their presence. And that's also what separates an attractive man from a hasty one. Want her to remember you? Don't rush. Don't try to make everything certain. Try something different. Stay a little longer. And hold your silence a little deeper. Not because you don't know what to say, but because you're listening with full attention, without pressure, without demand. Because if she truly likes you, what she needs is not a loud confession, but a man who can stand still long enough for her to feel safe, patient enough not to push things faster than the feeling can handle, and respectful enough to let her choose when to open her heart on her terms. If you've ever been in a moment like that, leave a comment. You might not expect it, but your story could be the light for another man, someone going through the same thing, but unsure of what to do. Sometimes, one honest story helps someone else stop at the right moment before they ruin something meaningful. And if this video helped you look back on a woman in your life, a glance, a time she stayed longer than usual, something you never paid attention to, then like, share, and subscribe. Not to support me, but to support a more mature version of yourself, the man who no longer reacts in haste, who no longer chases certainty and feelings, but chooses to love with calmness and freedom. And don't rush to leave, because the next video will show you what happens when you respond too quickly to a sign, and she pulls everything back. Click the video now showing on your screen, and continue this journey of learning to love with steadiness, slowness, and without the need to control.